some of the things that I've seen lately, and I see families with children, visit families sometimes, and they have little children, a couple of years old, 3 years old maybe, and the 2 and 3 years old have these devices, these that we're talking about. You can't call them telephones anymore, but they are those devices, everything devices. They'll tell you where to shop. They'll tell you how to drive. They'll tell you where the traffic is blocked. They'll tell you how to get virtually anything you're looking for. And little 2 and 3 year old children are now manipulating these because they also have games on them. Games for 2 and 3 year old children, which immediately introduces a very small child to a very large world. This never happened before in the history of mankind.
Oh, nothing like this has ever happened before. I was watching a movie just recently, and it was Christmas time, and it was an old movie. And I was looking at the different toys that were in the movie, and they were wood cars and wood trains and that kind of thing. And I was thinking, wow, how far we have come from those days, those simple days.
Yes.
And what's interesting, you mentioned these gadgets in the hands of toddlers.
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg and what's the name? Bill Gates have gone on record to say they would never let their kids play with those things. Isn't that interesting?
I had forgotten about that. You're absolutely right. I wonder why they would
manipulation. They knew they know this. They absolutely know that they can manipulate the brains of people, and they do it.
So when the Antichrist rides forth, conquering and to conquer, and I'm still looking at my King James Bible here, and the old word conquer, it always implies, with a sword and a shield and a horse. It's transcended those things. Conquering now is a message. It's an image. It's scientific. It is, what can I say, beyond refusal. If you are caught in the web, this new web of propaganda that's being created. And look at the internet as a communications device and how it's being censored, how it's being monitored by institutions all over the world, how it's being used to regulate the marketplace, not to mention, and I won't even talk about banking. I mean, that's very frightening what's happening to the exchange of money, but it's all being integrated into one system, if you will. And nobody's calling it the Antichrist system yet. Tom?
I don't think they ever will unless they study the Bible, because he's going to appear so delightful and so joyful and everybody's friend. Now, it's interesting you mentioned always the word conquer there would always appear as a military conquest, and it is. But again, it's not bullets, it's not missiles, it's not tanks, it's not laser beams, it's none of those things like conventional warfare or just somebody being shot on the streets. None of those things. But it is a military operation.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it. In fact, when we look at what's going on with technology, DARPA is involved. DARPA is basically a branch, not like a subcontractor for the U.S. military. I believe the Army. And so you look at it and you go, wait a minute, for a defense contractor is what DARPA is. Well, DARPA is involved in Facebook. DARPA is involved in Google. Well, why is that? And you start looking. Regina Dugan, a big name for Facebook. She was the head of DARPA. Well, you start doing a little bit of a deep dive on what she's done. Listen, Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg creates this thing called Facebook. It wasn't called Facebook at the time. He creates it. He's in college. And he gets recruited by DARPA. And DARPA has people at the top places in Facebook. These are military weapons that are being used, and it's coming from all these different angles. The propaganda, as you mentioned, all of this is planned. It's really a planned takeover of humanity. People are not going to be allowed to think for themselves. They're going to be controlled.
Well, I'm looking again at Revelation 13, and again, in my good old King James Bible, and we've read these things for years. When I read verses 16 and 17, which I'll do in just a moment, I know what you're going to be thinking. You're going to be thinking, I've memorized this. I know these verses. I know we've talked about them for years. But just in light of our current conversation, listen to this. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, in their foreheads, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So associating a number and a name. Now, I know what we used to think 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when we read these words. We're thinking something entirely different now when we think of these words.
We have so much more clarity, I think, now, which should be, right? Because in the book of Daniel, Daniel's told by the angel when he's Daniel chapter 12, when Daniel's trying to figure out the meaning of the last days, what's going on. Daniel's troubled by what he sees,
Right.
and the angel tells him. The angel says, "Listen, Daniel, this isn't for you to know. It's for those who are at the time of the end. Close up the words, seal the book until the time of then. Many will run to and fro and so forth." Then the angel goes on and says this, which is really interesting. The wicked at that time, the wicked will see it, but they will not understand. But the wise will see it, and the wise will understand. The implication is that everybody's going to know this weird stuff's going on.
Yes.
There's alarming things that are taking place. Unnerving things are taking
Right.
place. Daniel was unnerved by what he saw.
He was.
So the angel brought him into the right perspective. So everybody's going to tell, but the wicked will see it. They won't connect everything. They won't understand. But the wise will understand. Well, how's that work out? Well, at that time, as is necessary, the closer we get to the time of the end, there's that more clarity to be able to understand what is going on. The word revelation means to unveil or to reveal, as we know. Daniel's told that's what's going to happen. In the tribulation period, I believe, Gary, that number 666, people will get it. People who have been taught by someone like us, people who've been told by all of our viewers out there, the believers, right, that are watching this, they've been warning everybody, we get raptured up. But those people we've been warning, they're going to go, this is what my crazy friend Gary told me about, my crazy neighbor.
Yeah.
And I get it. I believe that is specifically for them. Now, we can guess what the 666 means now.
Yeah.
666 means now.
Now, I deliberately did not read that verse. I left it, but
I jumped ahead.
You jumped in there. No, and I'm glad you did, because here's the next verse. In verse 18 of Revelation chapter 13 says, "Here is wisdom." Whoa, 3 words in a sentence. Here is wisdom. Oh boy, I'm listening. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and his number is 666 in the King James Version of the Bible. Now, listen to this. Here is wisdom. We're talking about number and name being associated, and we're talking about the number of the beast. Now, there's no better way in the world to describe a system. In other words, what we've got here is, and I can remember 30, 40, 50 years ago, people talked about computer systems. And if you owned a corporation, you had to get a computer. And usually you would contact a large company, and you would build a room, and you would put a big computer in there, and you would have computer operators. In other words, you would have a system that controlled your corporation, basically. This is the same thing on a global scale, and we are now capable of doing this sort of thing. And here it has been lying, peacefully in the King James Bible for millennia. But only now can we see this as a possibility and really understand what's happening.